This is the Mile High 5 podcast with Carl Jensen and Doug Cunnington. We have authentic conversations about the journey to FI, health, happiness, and some very odd tangents. We interview FI experts, side hustlers, people on their way to FI, and those who have reached the other side. Join us every week, and if you want the show notes and links and all that other stuff, head over to milehighfi.com.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Mile High FI podcast. I am Carl Jensen with my co-host.
I'm Doug Cunnington.
And today we have a very special guest. I first met him probably 3 or 4 years ago now. My wife, Mindy, had told me, hey, we're having this event at the HQ, and this JT guy contacted me and said, oh, can I come too? He'd like to meet me. He's listened to my podcast. I'm like, that sounds great. And the funny thing was, I know a couple other JTs, so I just assumed it was this other JT that we knew. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know that person. It'll be fine. So then I go to the HQ. I'm like, oh no, that's not. This is a different JT. So, but it's been really good. You might be my favorite JT of all the JTs I know, and I know many at a JD. But what we're here to talk about today is this particular JT happened to hitch his ride post. I don't know.
Wagon?
Yeah, wagon. That's what I'm looking for. He hitched his wagon, AKA job, to the right company and has done really well in big tech. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and more. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is JT. What I do personally, I like to run. I like to read. I like to hang out with my wife and my kids. I love to come to Longmont, Colorado and drink your delightful beer. What I do professionally is I work on a team that designs and tests microprocessors. So I've worked for companies like Intel, AMD, ARM, kind of those big computer chip companies.
Awesome. And you have a fun story. So this is like a little segment we're trying. This one's called Get to Know JT a little bit. And you have a great honeymoon story. So keep it clean, please.
Sure.
But tell us your honeymoon story.
Yeah, I asked my wife, what is the most JT story that you can think of? And she said, well, you need to talk about when we went to British Columbia on our honeymoon. And there were two pieces of that story that I think really highlight the JT-ness that was there. One, I mentioned I do love to run. I had a period of life where I did a bunch of marathons. And one of those was when we got married and we went on our honeymoon. So I would go and disappear for 45 minutes, an hour and a half. I think I did a 12-mile long run and like a half marathon, like just race effort, right? Just a time trial for myself. So we'd be on our honeymoon and I'd just disappear for a couple hours. My wife has been wonderful at humoring my weird and strange hobbies, and it started super early. The second interesting story was I thought, this could be great. We could save a little bit of money. We were in British Columbia because my brother was participating in the Ironman triathlon that's out there every summer. It's in a little town. All the hotels get really full for the Ironman because it's not a big city or anything. So I thought we could save a little money and just stay with my brother. They've got some extra space in the hotel room that he had. So we spent several days of our honeymoon on a futon in a hotel room in Penticton, British Columbia. And a couple days into it, my wife was like, what are we doing on a futon on our honeymoon? And she has never let me live it down since. I'll be hearing about it, I'm sure, for forever. Yeah. And rightly so. That was not the place to save money, but it is a very good, illustration of JT.
Did you have some kind of thing? I know in college you put something on the doorknob to indicate to someone who might come in.
We took the shower curtain and hung it out in front. No.
No signals. That would have been good though. Smart.
Yeah.
Thinking ahead.
And it's probably better not to answer that question because if she ever listened to this, then she'd have yet another reason to relive that memory and add something even possibly worse to it. So good that you stopped there, JT.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned some big companies that you worked for. So can you talk about your educational background?
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. Go Longhorns! And after that, I went to get. I was hoping to get a doctorate degree. I wanted to teach, so I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Entered into their doctoral program. Decided I don't actually like grad school. In fact, I hate grad school more than I love teaching. Which was a surprise to me. So I did a thesis program there and exited that program with a master's degree in computer engineering.
Gotcha. And did you know that you liked computer engineering like out of the gates? Like, we're in high school and you're picking a major. We have the same major.
Right.
And I don't know, probably couple years in, I was like, I don't know if I like this so much, but I finished it and it was fine. But yeah, did you know like that you were really going to love it?
I knew I enjoyed computers. We had an Apple IIe from when I was like 7. So we were pretty early into personal computers. We were pretty early into the internet. I was the nerd in high school that would log on to the bulletin board service with my 14.4 baud modem and hear all the fun noises and do all that. So I took programming, classes in high school as well. So I knew I liked computers. I knew I was, good with them, good at math. And that seemed like a good direction for me to go. I generally enjoyed the program. I think unlike what I heard you describe that you just didn't. There were a handful of classes that I didn't really like, but on the whole, I liked learning about how computers worked, pretty much from the transistor level all the way through like operating systems and application software. This may have gotten way more nerdy than you expected in a hurry, but yeah, no, I enjoyed the program and
Okay. Well, you mentioning a couple of things, I'm like, there were certain aspects that I did enjoy. It was just more like the college experience. And then when it got into like the details of like, the stuff that you do, like the processor design, I was like, this isn't as interesting. I definitely like some of the coding pieces and the intersection with hardware and software that was definitely getting nerdy. But Carl, you did software, but you didn't have an education or you didn't have an education background in that. So how did you get from where you were to coding?
Yeah, that is correct. I went to school for biology and chemistry, and then I went for a PharmD, which is a doctorate of pharmacy, because I had no idea what else to do with my life. It was just a default option. That sounded okay. I realized I didn't like that. Right around that time, Y2K was happening, and there was a certificate program where you could learn programming in 30 weeks. It was what you'd call a boot camp now. Basically, you go for like 3 days a week, 2 hours a day, and they cram a very bunch of specific knowledge about the code and about it was very, so I was going to ask you, JT, if what you learned at school is relevant to what you do at your job. And for this program, it was directly relevant. They taught you exactly what you needed to know. So it was very valuable because I was able to get a job. And then as soon as I did that, I retrained myself in modern object-oriented languages out of COBOL and transitioned.
So before you ask the question, I have to jump in. So in the boot camp, did they just tell you how to change a 2 to a 4?
It was a little bit more sophisticated than that, but COBOL is pretty simple. Just not many keywords and tables were the hardest thing. That's easy.
There's like 6 people in the audience that picked up what I was saying. So yeah, ask the question you were going to ask. Yeah.
So I'm curious, JT, you went for all this school. How well did it prepare you for what you do today at work?
I think it prepared me pretty well. There is a lot in industry that just hasn't made its way into the university setting yet. So there's certainly lots of skills and background knowledge that I picked up on the job. But I think a lot of the classes that I took were directly useful in just understanding how microprocessors work broadly. And a lot of them were also useful in giving lots of practice in identifying failures and figuring out why things work the way that they do, which is a big part of my job, and going and recognizing and fixing mistakes.
Cool. So let's transition to talk about your job a little bit. You work in big tech, and I think I know the compensation there is a little bit different. You've got a salary, but then you're compensated in other ways that might work out really, really well for you if the company happens to work out well. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So all tech companies will work slightly differently, but the ones that I'm familiar with will usually have a cash component and then an equity component. And frequently the equity, especially for your individual contributor type like me, will come in the form of restricted stock units. So they'll say at varying points when you join or during performance reviews or things like that, we'll give you X dollars, so many dollars worth of our company stock at this point in time. And then when the grant gets approved, they'll convert that into shares. So they might say, we'll give you $10,000 worth of company stock. Our stock is worth $100 right now. So when the grant's approved, usually by the company board, they'll say you'll get 100 shares. And they usually will give you those shares over a period of time. 4 years is pretty common. Some companies will do 3, some companies will do 5. Yeah, but 4 years is pretty typical. So of that 100 shares, you'll get 25 shares every year, and they'll vest or become available to you maybe on a quarterly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis, sometimes on an annual basis. All that's going to vary depending on the company. And then by the time those shares vest, or you are able to take ownership of them, hopefully your company stock has gone up. And now that $10,000 is worth $12,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 by the time that those shares have vested to you.
Yeah. So the key to this is you're granted the stock at one price and you're locked in at that. So if the stock goes 10x after that, you've done really well for yourself.
Yeah. And if the stock is 1/10 of that, then you haven't done really well for yourself. And I've been in companies that have done both.
Awesome.
So you mentioned several places that you've worked. How many places have you worked at?
I've worked at 4 companies after I've graduated.
Gotcha. And then, so how many of the companies had the, stock compensation?
3 of them. There was one company that I worked at that was based overseas, and they didn't trade on, the U.S. exchanges. So they would do cash bonuses instead of stock. Okay. And then you signed on with the right company. So what does it feel like to get the golden ticket? It's pretty wild. It was pretty unexpected. Our company has gone up 12 or 15 or something times since I joined on. And that definitely has an impact on our net worth and sort of how we're able to think about money and how we think about our financial goals kind of moving forward.
Does it even feel real, or is it surreal all of a sudden? Like, I don't know, for myself, I'm in a much better place than I ever thought I would be as a kid. And now, how do you feel about that?
The more those shares vest, the more it feels real. So our RSUs are done through E-Trade, like lots of the restricted stock is. And E-Trade will tell you, like, here's how much money you would have if all of your shares were vested right now. And that piece of it still, feels like monopoly money, right? It still definitely doesn't feel real. But as those shares vest and, we vest every quarter, and you see a significant percentage of your annual salary just show up as part of your quarterly stock vesting. There's not really any way for that not to feel real because it's right there in your account. It's still strange, but it is, it does feel real, I think, to us.
And then you had this happen, or you were compensated in that way in the past. How did it turn out in the past? I know you said, one went down a little bit.
Yeah. So the first company I joined in 2006, I think between when I joined and when I left, their stock went down 60%, 70%. So it definitely colors your opinion on how much of those restricted stock shares you should keep in that individual company versus trying to do something else with it.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit later about how that money has or has not changed you. I think that's such a fascinating topic. I think about it with myself, what I do differently. If I didn't have the money, would I be a different person? But yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Let's talk about financial independence a little bit. When did you first learn about financial independence?
So I think our first big exposure to financial independence was in 2018. At the time, I was working in a job for a company that I really liked and a team that I really liked, but doing work that I really didn't like. And somewhere in that time period, a conversation with a previous colleague came back to mind, and he was talking about this Mr. Money Mustache guy and how, well, this guy says if you save 25 times the amount that you spend, then you can be done working. And I've been fortunate enough to have jobs that I usually really enjoy. And this was something different. So I thought, I'm going to go check this out. So I binged 10 years worth of Mr. Money Mustache blog posts over the summer, and read through his blog, through the Mad Fientist blog, started listening to podcasts, because I'm your stereotypical obsessive engineer. And that was really kind of the start of our financial independence journey, like really seriously and intentionally.
Cool. And how were you doing, like, before that? Were you putting money into 401k and the normal kind of stuff?
Yeah. So my goal before that was always to take 10% of our income and put it for long-term investments, whether that was IRAs or 401ks or taxable accounts, which, I'd done that since my college jobs. So we started in a pretty good situation anyway. And it just really accelerated when I started looking through the other options that were available and how we were spending and how we were investing.
Okay. And on that note, did you change anything after, reading all the blogs and everything?
We did. We were big foodies. We went out a lot, both just my wife and I, and then we would go out a lot with our kids because we'd get to 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon or something and look at each other and go, all right, well, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? I don't know. Okay, well, I guess we're going to go to the burger place, and the burger place is right next to the ice cream place. So I guess we're going to the ice cream place too. So the biggest change was probably to take that and put in, more of a meal plan, and really be more intentional about that. I think we halved the amount of money that we spent on food in like 2 months, just because of the, eating out less and then, having a plan were the two big pieces of that.
Did that feel like a big sacrifice?
It didn't, largely because a lot of the reason that we would go out to eat was because we didn't have any, it seemed like so much work to figure out what we want, go to the grocery store, get all the stuff, come back, cook it. So it was more of a default option at that point than something that we really enjoyed. And we found as we started making more of our food at home that, hey, it's actually, it's not any slower, right, than going, and we don't have to put in a lot of time to think about it either because we have this plan already in place. Getting to 5:00 on a Wednesday and going, what are we having for dinner? Well, we'll just look at our meal plan spreadsheet and that's the answer. That took a lot of the stress out of it, and really made it a more pleasant experience for us.
And I think this is a good time for a tangent. So you're from the land of barbecue, Austin.
Yes.
And tell me your recipe or your normal tactics for brisket.
I follow the Aaron Franklin method for brisket. So, salt and pepper, Nothing super fancy in terms of what you put on it. In a smoker, kind of go through the stall, wrap it, leave it there till it's at the temperature that you want, pull it out, let it rest, and then slice it up.
Simple. Yeah, that's what I do too. And there's a great video on YouTube people can look up. Franklin has like several things that he cooks. Have you gone through all the videos he has on YouTube there?
I've done a couple of them, but not all of them yet.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, brisket's good, and that's the tangent. So we're good with that.
I have a tangent to your tangent, Doug. There is a city in California that's famous for asparagus. They even have an asparagus festival. So kind of the same thing, I guess. We should go out there for that sometime.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it in a while. But when you were in Germany, you found all these girthy white asparagus, right? Have you had any white asparagus? Do you know?
I'm sure I have, because we lived in Germany when I was younger. So we probably had the same girthy white asparagus that Carl is familiar with now.
Yeah.
But we left there when I was 8, so I may not remember it.
Yeah. And you said it was the girth of a Costco hot dog, right?
Yeah, it was pretty similar. I wish I would have had it. You know, I remember seeing white asparagus in grocery stores as a kid, and my mom never bought it. So I've never had it before, and I don't see it in the stores out here. Like one day, you will be mine white asparagus.
We'll have to go somewhere special, like a Whole Foods. It's too expensive, though. I almost never go in there.
Yeah, well, maybe at the Asparagus Festival in California.
I bet they got all kinds out there. So, okay.
Did you tell your wife about FI, and was she on board?
Yeah, we talked about it, and she was generally on board. She grew up very frugally as well, and went through, before I met her when she was in graduate school, she also lived very, very frugally. So I think going back to that and being more, it was really just being more intentional about what we were spending. She could get on board with, especially looking at kind of the goal of, okay, well, we can get to a place where if we decide that the work that we're doing isn't where we want to be anymore, that's a viable option, that we can make whatever changes we need to make without having the external pressure of needing that paycheck in our life.
And then did you guys put a date down or anything like that where you're like, here's where our trajectory is heading?
We did. I think I ran a couple of different scenarios and kind of looked at like, all right, well, when I'm 42, like maybe we could be at a place where we'd be kind of like that lean FI. And, we could continue to live, pretty modestly and frugally with the money that we had then. We thought perhaps we would not be able to stay in Austin because property taxes in Austin are pretty substantial. But we thought we could go somewhere and be there at that time, if that's what we wanted from our career.
Okay. And what would you do if you didn't work? Do you know?
I don't know. There's still an interest that I have in teaching from when I was growing up. So I would like to find something that I could express that, whether it might be through writing or video or maybe podcasting or something. I don't know. I don't know what the topic would be, and I don't know what the medium would be. But I like learning things, and then I like being able to kind of put those things together and share them with other people. So I hope that I could find, something that I could really live that out.
What, is there an age group or certain like set of people that you enjoy teaching more than others?
Probably adults. I didn't get along great with high school kids when I was in high school. And I can't imagine it'd really be that much better now. And the kinds of things that I'm interested in probably wouldn't interest most kids that are younger than that. Yeah.
Before we move on to the next section, I have one more question for you. So are you FI now? Have you reached financial independence?
We have.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. So let's talk about how this golden ticket has or has not changed your spending and money habits. You told me a pretty amusing story. I saw you in Austin recently, and you told me a story about comparing prices at grocery stores. Can you explain that and let us know if you still do that now?
Yeah. So when we started learning about financial independence and really focusing in on our food budget, because it was a substantial part of our spending, I went all in, right? So not only did we do the meal plan, but for a couple months, whenever I went to any grocery store and picked up anything, I would mark down the price and the unit price, and I have a spreadsheet for that because, of course, I do. And I was that guy who, since we had our ingredients already, when I knew what I needed to get from the store, I would look at the HEB, which is our kind of local grocery store, Sprouts, which is more of a national brand, and then Randall's, which is like an Albertsons brand. And I would have all three websites up on my computer and go, all right, we need a can of Great Northern beans. Who has the best price on Great Northern beans this week? And it would never be Albertsons, because that's not what they do, or Randall's. But I'd go look and like, oh, Sprouts has Great Northern beans on sale this week. It's 37 cents instead of 58 cents. So I'm going to go get my Great Northern beans at Sprouts this week. Right. And for just everything down, I'd go down the list and on my shopping list, be like, here's the grocery store that I'm going to get it at this time. And then for things that we might get occasionally, like, oh man, the strawberries they're just too expensive this week. Like, I know I can get them for $1.50 a pound, and now they're $2.25 a pound. So I'm not going to get strawberries this week.
Yeah.
Was this an effective use of your time? You still doing?
How much did you save? Yeah.
Yeah. I hope you're not still doing this.
I'm not generally still doing that. But at that point I was going to the stores anyway. Sure. And I found that, just typing in some stuff into the search bar of a couple different websites really didn't take that much extra time. I could go through our whole grocery list in 5 minutes or so. And if I ended up saving $10 or $15 a week, like, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. That's more than I would have expected. Well, is that about right? 10 or $15, like, if you got the right deal or something?
It usually would end up around that. Frequently it would be things like produce, where one store might have, something that was on sale. Like, I could go find the thing that was on sale, or meat. You might find a store had, we eat a lot of chicken thighs. So maybe a store had chicken thighs, like, buy one, get one free or something. And you could really do well, with that.
Okay. Yeah. And we were, side stories. So the four of us were hanging out with Jake. So Jake is the fourth person. He was talking about how he wanted to get some baby back ribs from Sam's, but they were out. I went to Sam's right after that, and they had a bunch. So I bought him some. And you're right. Yeah. I mean, it was like $1 off per pound. So yeah, it was a pretty good savings. So I guess it's worth
Carl
the
just
time.
looks dumbstruck right now. Like, he can't believe that this was a thing that I actually did every week.
It cracks me up. I'll tell you one other story. I've got a relative who's very well off, and they're obsessed with gas. They're a little bit older, and I think as people get older, this becomes an obsession for some people. And it's a super obsession for these people. Every time I see them, they talk about gas for minutes. I have a 15-minute conversation that I don't want to have about fuel prices. So Costco's not close to us, but this guy's telling me, he's like, I'm going to go down to Costco and get some gas. It's like a dime cheaper. I'm like, well, you've got a pretty substantial vehicle. By the time you get down there, I think all your savings are going to be erased. You're going to use up all that gas just to get down to Costco and back. And do you know what his response was? He said, well, it's cheaper at Costco. I'm like, what? You missed the whole point. Plus your time. You don't need to do this. Stop fucking looking at gas prices. Just go to the local. Like, if there's 3 on a corner and one's cheaper, of course, go to that one. But otherwise, it's, I think most of these exercises are a waste of time, unless you're really struggling. If you're in college, like, totally totally do that. And you have more time, but things shift, right? You get a family, you've got kids, you don't have time to compare cans of Great Northern beans.
Great Northern beans.
Is that a kind of bean, or is that a
kind of
brand?
bean? Yeah.
Okay.
You do it with your beans, man. You know, all this asparagus stuff. But okay, JT, you recently went on a very expensive trip. Can you tell us about that? And it is obviously a departure from the grocery spreadsheet analysis.
Yeah. Which we still do the meal planning for the grocery stuff, but I don't comparison shop every ingredient anymore. Yeah, so we recently went on a trip to Peru to go see Machu Picchu and kind of the surrounding Andean mountains. This was a milestone trip for us. I had a milestone birthday this year. We had a milestone anniversary this year. So I thought, let's just try something a little different. Like normally, I'm the guy who's looking to find $50 off on the best airline price, even if it means we leave at 6:30 in the morning instead of 9:45 in the morning or something. I thought let's try to do something as an experiment. Let's go somewhere really nice. We can afford it, so let's give it a try. And maybe we'll go, that was really nice, but it wasn't that much nicer than the stuff that we normally do. Or maybe we'll go, that was actually just really nice. We would like to do that again. So we found a place in Peru that we could do a lot of things that we wanted. We could do some hiking, a lot of hiking, some biking. We'd get to see a lot of the area. We'd get to eat some really good food, have some really nice drinks, stay in a really nice bed. And we'd get to do what we wanted. It wasn't like a fixed tour itinerary. They'd have, 20 different hikes that you could do. And you'd get to pick this one I want to do on this day. And this day I only want to do something for a half day and I'll, hang out at the lodge for the rest of the day. So that's kind of the direction that we thought, let's give it a try. And it ended up being really awesome. And we decided, this actually might be worth it for where we are now financially, for future trips that we might decide to take.
How long was the trip?
We were at the lodge for 6 nights.
Okay. And have you ever taken slow travel, really long trips, 3 weeks or, a couple months or something?
Not really. We've come up to Colorado and spent several weeks here. Not necessarily as a travel experience, but because we have family up here.
Sure.
And then as I was growing up, my dad was in the military. So we did really slow travel where we'd be 2.5 years somewhere and then, 2.5 years somewhere else. Okay. But in terms of the vacations that we typically take, our work doesn't usually let us go for, 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Sure. Okay. So you were there for 6 days, you said. And talk about the food a little bit. You said you were foodies, and what kind of stuff did you have, and did you have control of the menu, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so they had the menu set. They worked with I think his name was Virgilio Rodriguez. He's a Michelin-starred chef out of Lima. So the super famous Peruvian chef. They worked with him to get the menu. It was unfortunately not a super Peruvian menu, but he did use a lot of ingredients local to the area of the lodge in the menu. And I don't know I don't remember all the specific meals. They did have a 4-day rotating menu. So they'd have, it's usually 2 or 3 different options for lunch or dinner. And then the next day they'd have 2 or 3 completely different options. And they'd rotate through that every 4 days.
So it sounds like Camp Fi, basically.
Yeah. Just like Camp Fi.
Yeah, that's cool with the food and having just high quality. I expect a chef like that is going to get the best ingredients and all that kind of stuff. So very cool.
So this was by far the most expensive vacation you've ever done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So-
it wasn't even close.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a second. A moment ago, we were talking about comparing prices on Great Northern Beans to spending a large sum of money on an all-inclusive place with a Michelin-rated food. I'm kind of trashy. I eat at Taco Bell. I'm sure that I've heard that term before. I know it's very fancy. Can you talk to that a little bit? That's a pretty big transition.
It is, and it has been a big transition for both of us to look at, okay, we have a lot more money than we did 4 years ago. What does that mean, or what should that mean about how we live our lives, and what we spend on? And I think, my thoughts on this keep evolving as we get more used to the situation. But one of the things I think I'm at now, one of the places I think I'm at now, is a lot of people in the financial independence community use, a savings target or a spending target, and it almost seems like that's a goal for them. And I'm not convinced right now that that's a great goal to have. It can be a great tactic. It can be a great technique. It can be a great way to get you from the life that you have to a life that maybe more fully lives out the values that you have. But I don't know that it's a great goal in itself. And so as we've started thinking about, what is it that we value? And what does it make sense to spend on those things, given the change in our financial situation? It has moved us from, okay, I'm going to go see where I can save 85 cents on a package of strawberries, to, we really do want to go on a trip where we can just kind of get away. Like, we don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of people in a big tourist spot. We want to go on a trail that maybe nobody's been on for 3 weeks. And we can go do that. We want to go be active and then come back and feel really fancy and, eat really nice food, have some really nice cocktails, and then sleep in a bed that we're just going to, fall asleep on, like that. So that was, kind of the value, at least for that trip, that we thought, well, what does it look like to really try to maximize that here?
Sure.
Yeah, so I've got one more comment on this. I think the value word is really interesting because I know you. I've been to your house. I've seen your cars. I've driven them. And I know you live in Austin, which is expensive, but your house is modest. You don't have a super fancy house. You don't have super fancy cars. So I think the important lesson in this may be, like, figure out what really matters to you. Clearly, the cars don't matter as much to you, so you could save money on that, but spend money on what you really care about. And I think the whole trick to that is actually figuring out what really has value to you, because I think some folks get caught up in stuff and they think it has value, but then it's just ego play because they need this car because it looks great to their neighbors. And yeah.
And it's turned out to be a harder question than I thought it was going to be. And I understand, I think all of us are in pretty privileged positions where we get to sit and talk about, well, what are we going to value and how do we live that out with our time and all that? But for a lot of my life, through school and then through the early part of my career, a lot of my decisions felt like they were driven by external constraints. You need to make enough money to be able to have a place to live and go get stuff to eat, all that. And though I never worried about those things specifically, it was let's get good grades or let's pursue these goals. And that sort of drove a lot of your decisions on what you do with your time. And when you reach a point, or we reached a point at least, where we thought we could, if we wanted to, both quit right now and we'd be fine. It really makes you sit and think about, okay, now everything I do with my time, I'm doing with my time because I want to. And how am I going to feel about that in 20 years, 30 years, right? Kind of like Dr. Yu was talking about on the episode that you had with him. Really sitting down and thinking about what are the things that I value? If I had complete control over my time, what would I do? It's a question that I hadn't really had a lot of opportunity to seriously sit and think about, other than a purely intellectual exercise. And now we're at a point where, yeah, you're accountable to your values now, not to these external constraints. And it's trickier than I thought it would be.
You mentioned, and I may mangle it a little bit here, but in the FI community, a lot of people are fixated on a savings goal or maybe an expenses goal to make sure they're not spending too much. And I wonder what you might think the pitfalls of aiming towards a target like that would be.
I think the biggest pitfall is it takes your attention away from the reasons that might be important. There are lots of good reasons to have those goals very strict. Maybe you really want that autonomy and direction over your time. Okay, well, you can't do that if you need your paycheck to live day to day. So you put these things in place as a means toward that autonomy. Maybe you want to really minimize your impact on the environment around you. And that controls, like, you think that the best way to do that is to buy fewer things, to be really minimalist in how you approach your life. And that's great too. Like, I think that's an awesome value to want to live off of. And that could drive, like, oh, well, I only want to spend on these kinds of things, or I really want to minimize my spending to minimize my impact on the environment around me. But to have those, I think those number goals as goals in themselves can cloud the values that are around them. If you really value generosity and giving, having a really strict goal might put you in a spot where you're like, oh, well, I mean, I can't, everything from I can't buy a round of drinks for my friends to I can't give to this cause that really resonates with me because I've got this number, and the number supplants the value in that case. So I think it's just important to see those numbers as a tactic or a technique, and to let the values drive the tactic, rather than I love a good spreadsheet, right? I love to watch the number go up and to the right, and that's easy. It's easy to do. It's not easy to do, but it's easier to follow that than to sit and think about, all right, well, how is my life reflecting my values? What is it that I even value? Right. So I think it can just be an easier question to answer. And so it's an easier one to focus on.
Mm-hmm. On the topic of spreadsheets, do you keep a budget or track your spending or track your investments?
I'd say we track more than we budget these days. We definitely track our investments. I have a number of spreadsheets at different levels of detail on, from a 18-line net worth statement that we look at about once a month, to a much more detailed investment allocation spreadsheet that I keep track of. I do like to know where our money goes, but we're at a point now that looking backwards at it is enough. And we can go, oh, we really spent a lot of money on, I don't even know, on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Do we care first? And then if we care, what do we want to do about it?
Mm-hmm. And then what do you guys do, Carl?
We track our spending, but we don't really have a budget. Yeah, I think at one point maybe that would have been appropriate, but now it's a waste of exercise. I still like to see where our money is going, though, because sometimes it's surprising. And how about you, Doug?
Well, before I answer, aren't you and Mindy doing like a monthly series on her show about budgeting?
Yeah, we are. I should know the URL for that, like biggerpockets.com/Mindy's budget, I think it is.
Yeah.
I should know that. I'll put a link to it on the show notes.
It's pretty good. I listened to the series. So, we're pretty much the same as what you guys mentioned. we have a budget, but it's kind of been set for the last few years, and we really just track it after we spend the money. And it's like, this is what our fixed expenses are. And then we have variable stuff. Like I just did the front yard here. I bought like, a few hundred, maybe $1,000 of like rock. So that wasn't in the budget, but it was a big expense. So, but we didn't worry about it too much. Okay. Where are we at here? I think it's my turn. Okay. How did your parents impact your views on money and spending?
So I learned a lot from my parents about money, and we talked about money a lot, and I got to see them demonstrate money a lot. I was very fortunate in that my dad paid and continues to pay a lot of attention to personal finance strategy. So he was the one who handled a lot of the investments in the family. He's the one who put everything into Quicken. I don't know if either of you remember Quicken or have ever used it.
I remember it. Yeah.
And kept track of all the data. My mom was a very tactical financial person. So she would always know where the best gas prices in town were. She would know, here's the items at this grocery store that's on sale now. Here's the items in this other grocery store that are on sale now. Here's the time of year that you buy strawberries. Here's the time of year that you buy peaches, or whatever. So I got to see both sides, both the really kind of day-to-day tactical part. And my mom's amazing. She just keeps all this stuff in her head. She didn't need a spreadsheet to track all of it. She just knows it. And I got to see the long-term, all right, where do we want things to be in 20 years? How do we get from where we are to there? How do we think about retirement accounts and, tax advantaged accounts? How do you look at your financial position from the big picture? So I was fortunate enough to have really great examples of both of those, and they were both happy and eager to teach my brother and I both sides of this. So we would go shopping with my mom. Not that I loved going shopping, but we would get to see why she made the purchasing decisions that she did. We would get to go to 4 different grocery stores because they had different things on sale, and we'd have different coupons for all of those things. And we'd get to see, go look for mutual funds that have low expense ratios, kind of think about value versus growth stocks in this way. My parents gave us both, good examples and a good amount of help. When I was in high school, I worked at a local grocery store, and my parents contributed to a Roth IRA to the amount that I made. My dad's position was, this is important to me. I want it to be important to you. You're 16. Like, let me go put a bunch of money in a Roth IRA for when I'm 59 and a half. That's not going to matter to you. But seeing that this is important to me had an impact on me. And I continued to do that through, when he stopped, and then I worked in college and then early career. Like, I went, this was important to him. It was important enough to him that they put their money into it. It should probably be important to me. So I had really good examples across, I think, the spectrum of personal finance topics from both my parents. I'm really grateful for that.
Awesome. Yeah. It's kind of the opposite. I think a lot of the people we talk to, it's like their parents were so bad with money that they realized they had a gap in knowledge, and they went and tried to learn about it. But yeah, very few great examples like that. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about fitness. You're a pretty fit guy, JT. Do you have a fitness routine?
I do. I love to run. Running is probably my favorite exercise. If I could run every day, I absolutely would. My body has decided that running every day is not really something that it wants to do. especially as I am not 20 anymore. And so I do try to, I've started to work in some weightlifting as well. So right now, I think I run about 4 days a week. I try to run about 5 to 7 miles when I run, and then I try to be in the gym 2 days a week to do a relatively simple weight routine.
Okay. Yeah, I was impressed. You went to Camp Phi also, so we got to hang out then. And a group of us walked up the what is it called? The incline?
The Manitou Incline.
Yeah. So we went up that, which is roughly, it's upstairs, and it's like walking upstairs for about a mile. It's kind of steep, right?
Yeah.
And it's about 6,000 feet of elevation or so, or the elevation at that area is about 6,000 feet. Anyway, I was impressed coming from Austin. You were ahead of me, and I was one of the sort of front runners in our group. But I was like, man, I can't believe JT made it up this thing. And yeah, you just crushed it. Did you have you done it before?
No, I'd never done the incline before.
Okay.
I've heard about it. It's, a lot of the running community in the Front Range, they're like, oh, the incline. Like you're not going to run up it unless you're Jake. Yeah. But like it's a cool thing to do. So
yeah. Was it tougher than you thought, or just about right? Or did you just go fast enough to stay ahead of me, or what was the deal?
No, I mean, I think it was just about right. Like it was a good challenge. It was a good workout, to be sure. I tried to, because I've been running so long, I think I have a reasonable sense of like when I'm just going to crash and be done, because I've bonked on lots of runs. So I was mostly just trying to, let me keep my heart rate at a good pace where I can keep making progress. And maybe I can get Jake breathing kind of hard, which didn't happen. But we got 100 steps from the end, and he just takes off and just leaves me. It was amazing. But yeah, no, it's a good workout, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty fun. And well, you talked about how much you like running. Why do you like running so much?
I don't know. I think initially it was a good form of meditation. In some ways, you're out there. Before I started listening to podcasts on my runs, you're just out there with your thoughts, and like that's it. There's not really anything else there, unless you're running with someone else. I like the measurement aspect of it, right? In a lot of my work, which is probably similar to the careers that both of you had, it's real hard to get an objective measure. Am I doing well? Am I not doing well? I don't know. It depends on what my boss says today, and how my boss feels today, and how I feel about what I'm doing. Like it's really squishy. And running is not squishy at all. Here's my route. Here's my time. Did I make the time that I wanted? Did I make a better time than I made last time I really wanted to check my time? There's nothing, you either did it or you didn't. And I think that piece of it was probably more appealing to me when I was younger, and has probably shifted a little now that, again, my body likes to not do as much of that anymore. But I do enjoy just being out. You get to see a lot of different things. You get to see things a lot more slowly than you would in a car. And I like the feeling of having run. It feels good for me. Yeah.
And I don't know how fast you run, but it sounds like you're running about an hour or so. I love that sort of time frame where it's like, it's not too long where it totally crushes your body and you're like sore for a couple days, or at least for older guys like us. But yeah, that hour time frame is really good. Carl, you told me that you've been running a bunch, right? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I have. Every other day I do a run. I've got this app called Runkeeper, and I put in there that I want to run 100 miles over the next 3 months, which isn't that much, but it's a lot for me.
Yeah. Yeah. How's it going? How do you feel?
It's going all right. I got to tell you, Doug and JT, I hate running. So I actually did a half marathon a couple of years ago, and I did the whole training program, and I did it successfully. And when I started the training program, I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like I suck at the start, but at some point this is going to get easier and I'll just be able to run and not be out of breath. And I'll actually be able to talk while I'm running. And I got to tell you that never happened. It never got easier. I'm sure I got better. And maybe I pushed myself a little bit more and I got faster. So I always felt the same, but what I will say, it always sucked. It never did not suck. I hate running.
Didn't you get the endorphins and the runner's high and all the good stuff?
I feel better for having done it and I feel good for doing it, but the actual process of it is, I can't stand it.
So I know you love to walk, and it seems like if you would walk for hours, and it seems like you really enjoy that. What do you think is the difference between your walking time and your running time?
I think I'm genetically very poor. I know I've got smaller lungs. We did that in biology lab one time, and I don't think I'm cut out to be a runner. The best 5K time I ever had it was under 30 minutes, but not by much, maybe 28 something. So I think no matter how hard I train, like the best mile I ever did was high school, like 7.5 minutes, which sucks too. I just don't think I'm cut out to be a runner. I don't have the genetic disposition for it. So I don't know.
I feel like you're writing yourself off. You're like giving yourself an excuse. But if you don't like it, that's cool. But I'm like, you could do it, man. Come on.
I'm going to continue to do it. Doug, we could do I know you've got some injuries, but I am going to do the 5K at Shoes and Brews in November.
I've been trying to do, get my Achilles back in shape here. I'm doing more ankle raises, trying to ice it up and like get the swelling to go down. But the tragic part is I love to run, but I have, this older body that's, it's a little beat up, a couple dents around the corners there.
Doesn't want to do it.
No. But I'm glad you're running. Hopefully, if you don't like running so much, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, that's another interesting story that probably isn't a good one. So the last 5K I did, I started running and I was running with a friend and his kids. And I learned at the start of the race that his kid's goal was to beat me in the race. And that was the whole goal. So I'm racing this 6-year-old and he was ahead of me for almost the whole thing. And at the end, I overtook him. So I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. I beat him. And then I'm like, dude, you beat a 6-year-old.
I saw, he mysteriously tripped. It was very, very odd.
Right when Carl was nearby, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened. So then he's like, okay, the next time I will beat Carl. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty competitive. I don't like... So that's kind of my motivation this time, not to get beaten by a 6-year-old. And he might even be 5, I don't know. But in another year or two, it's completely over. I've got like maybe 2 more races with him, and then he's just going to annihilate me. And then I'll probably quit after that. But
he has good genes, so it's tough.
Yeah, he's got real good genes.
Well, like I said, I'm glad you're running, and maybe depending on when that 5K is, I could do a 5K. The problem is I'm lightly competitive. So if there's other people running around me, like the last mile, I'll want to like go faster. And that's when I'm susceptible to like pop that Achilles, which I definitely do not want to do. So anyway.
That would be bad. I do not have the strength to carry you to the finish line. Jake probably could though.
Jake probably could.
Yeah. Man, Jake.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So should we finish up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's close out here. JT, what does your perfect day look like?
There would be a run involved. Yeah. Probably about that same hour, like 45 minutes to an hour and 15, something like that. So a good run. Probably hang out with the kids a little bit. They're at an age now that they still like spending time with me. And they're old enough that they can do things that I think are fun too. So this is a good time to maybe go for a hike or play games with them or something, spend a little bit of time with them. I'd probably do some reading because I like to read a mix of fiction and nonfiction, and it's good for me. Maybe I do a little work. I like especially the intellectual challenges of the work that I get to do. And solving those problems is pretty fun. And then there'd probably be some barbecue at the end of the day. Maybe a brisket, maybe some ribs, probably some good beer, and hopefully hanging out with some people that I enjoy hanging out with. Maybe have them all come over. I don't know that I'd want to cook the barbecue that day. Though that could be fun too, but maybe just have them, over and we could all hang out and eat some barbecue and drink some beer. I think that'd be a pretty great day for me.
I like JT's perfect day. I'll skip the running part and join in with you for the rest.
Yeah, that does sound like a good day.
The more I run, the more beer I can drink and not feel bad about it. So
that's what I always said. It's like I just run so I could drink beer and eat barbecue, basically. It's a good trade-off. Okay. I asked you, I gave you a heads up on this one. It's okay if you don't have an answer, but who would you describe as successful, or maybe how you view success?
Yeah, so I think it is more a class of people who live maybe intentionally is the way that I'd describe it, who have some amount of clarity of what they want to get out of life, in a really spend the resources that they have, whether it's their time or their attention or their money, in living those out as best and as deeply as they can. So I think one person that comes to mind, I saw one of his books over there, is Cal Newport, who seems to just really have a good focus on what he wants out of his professional life and his personal life, and is really disciplined in pursuing those values in his life. I think my dad is similar in that he's given a lot of thought to what he values, and really does a great job, I think, of both communicating those values to the people around him and living those values consistently. And I think a lot of other metrics of success can come from that. But I think, when you're looking back at your life, I think that's really going to be the thing that I'd want to look back at and go, okay, I was intentional. Even if my values may change over time, as I went through life, I was intentional about discovering what those were about myself and discovering how I could live those consistently.
That's a good place to finish. JT, this has been great. Where can people find you?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm on Facebook. I'm on the Bigger Pockets Money group. Not that I need to plug Mindy's Facebook group on your show. But I'm there. I guess I'm on Twitter at J Longino. You'll probably need to include that in your notes. We'll
link it up. But it sounds like if people are trying to find you, they can go to a brewery or a barbecue place in Austin, and you might be there.
Yes.
Or a running trail, perhaps.
Or a running trail.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Cool. We'll link up your Twitter just in case people want to get in touch with you. But yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show. That was the Mile High 5 podcast, and I'm Doug Cunnington, the balder host, and Carl Jensen is the cool, sexy one. If you dig the show, please do 3 things for us. Number 1, tell a friend, a family member, an enemy about the show. We really don't care who you tell. Maybe forward them a specific show that you know that they will like. It's the single most helpful thing that you can do to spread the word. It's like giving us a virtual high five, and actually we don't give high fives in person, so the virtual kind's pretty good. And more importantly, your friend or family member or even your enemy will appreciate the fact that you were thinking of them. Number 2, make sure you're following or subscribed on your podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, whatever you're using, and that way you won't miss a show. And number 3, please leave us a rating and review. We read them on the show occasionally, and you might hear yours out there on an upcoming episode. Quick disclaimer, this show is not financial or legal advice. I'd actually be surprised if it sounded like it. It's really just for entertainment, and that's at least what we're hoping for. But seriously, get advice from professionals. Carl and I are just 2 guys with microphones that sit in my basement and talk. So we'll catch y'all next week. you've been in town for a couple days now, and the last time I talked to you, you were going to Georgia Boys. What'd you get? How'd you like it?
Yeah, we got the family pack. So it's got some chicken, some ribs, some pulled pork. I added some brisket into it. And then you get to pick some sides. Jake had said, you got to get the sweet potatoes. So we got the sweet potatoes. We got some coleslaw. We got some cornbread and the beans, which was another Jake suggestion. So it was pretty fantastic. Yeah.
How was the brisket? You come from the land of brisket.
I have a preference for moist brisket rather than the lean brisket.
Yeah.
So the whole cut that we got was from the flat, like the whole half pound that we got. So it was good, but it wasn't my preferred cut of a brisket.
Yeah. I like the point, the fatty part. Yeah. I mean, I don't eat all the fat on there unless it rendered really good. But yeah. What kind of brisket do you like?
I did not know there were multiple kinds. I really liked the one you made, Doug. I like the one I had at Franklin's, which is where our guest hails from. That was super good. And I would say those two, the Franklin's one and yours, were probably better than the one I've had at Georgia Boys. But who knows? Maybe they were different kinds. I had no idea there was different brisket before right now.
It's more different areas of the brisket. So there's one that has more fat in it and one, an end that has more fat and an end that has less fat. And so they have a different texture to them, depending on which end of the brisket you get.
Okay. At Georgia Boys, did you honor us by ordering the asparagus casserole?
We did not get to the asparagus casserole. They only included 4 sides with the family platter that they had. So I went ahead and got the ones that I thought the family would like rather than the ones that I thought would make a good joke for the podcast.
Yeah. It usually sells out pretty quick. You probably would not have been able to get it anyway.
I didn't even know they had that.
Yeah, they don't. I just made it up.
Oh man. I was like, I think you could make that, for Thanksgiving instead of the green bean casserole, put an asparagus, or even better, sneak in some asparagus to the green bean casserole. Then when everybody goes to the bathroom, they're like, oh no, I'm getting very sick. It smells like putrid in here.
I'm actually kind of glad to know you made it up. If I'd have seen it, I probably would have went like, oh yeah, this would be great for the podcast. And I probably would have gotten it. So
we appreciate your support.
Yeah. We'll come up with a recipe for that. So if people listen to this whole sound check, they're in for a surprise.